Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. Grant Venerable joining us here live today. Ecstatic to have him, our professional of the year, doctor, chemist, professor, lecturer, author, you name it. He's amazing, and I'm glad you're here. Grateful. How was your Thanksgiving?
Well, it was great.
But you're saying great, and there's a story. So tell me the story behind it.
It's so much life.
Good.
And the journey out was not overbearing. My sister drove in her car.
Where'd you go?
Drove to Phoenix.
That's right.
To the suburb of Chandler, Arizona.
Beautiful.
And it is many beautiful homes there, and her number one son and his family live there, and they've only had it for I guess a couple of years. So it was the first time I'd seen it, but that's where we landed on Wednesday for a little repast before Thanksgiving. Nice. And just for people to get warmed up and warmed up to Thanksgiving and each other. This family is the family of the future.
Tell me why? What's going on?
I say that because there were about maybe 20 of us total, involving all of the relatives. My sister's is mainly around her adult children and their children. And my brother didn't get to go, but he was with his daughter up in Arcata, California.
Oh, okay, beautiful.
And then I was there. We stayed in a hotel near the house.
I'm sure.
And then the big day was Thursday, Thanksgiving. And so we got to see all of the wives of the sons and the husband of the daughter and their children. So that was wild. I think it was 4 youngsters. Let's see. The oldest son had 2, 12 and 18, a girl of 12 and a boy of 17. And the other son flew in from Houston with his wife, and they have an 11-year-old daughter.
Wow.
And then also from here in Yucca Valley was my sister's daughter, and with her husband and their little 5-year-old. So these kids really hooked it up well. The story of that particular group of people is the story of human ancestry and all of the blended ancestors that were present. And I hadn't seen the youngsters in a few years, but many were quite a bit larger and more mature. And the eldest son's children were his in-laws were also there. That's his wife's mother and father, who go way back in Arizona and Texas in their ancestry. So that's a whole story on its own. And then the younger son, who's I guess he's about 50, and his wife. Well, his wife is from Vietnam, and they live in one of the largest, I think it's the largest Vietnamese community in the United States. It's in a suburb of Houston, Texas. Mm-hmm. So there must be 800,000 people in that community. And then the daughter, my sister's daughter, she's the youngest adult child there. And their little girl, her husband is from Ohio, but he's from the Ohio mountain region, which reaches across the border into Pennsylvania and down the Appalachian Mountains. So he's an Appalachian guy. And so all the children are they're blends of their parents, and they flowed so well together. And the dinner was quite a sumptuous feast of the standard and even less standard uh, foods. But then the next day, Thursday, was a little outing for everyone at the train park
Ooh,
in
what's that?
Chandler. They have a train that you can ride on. It has like 10 cars to it, and you get 8 people, 9, 10 people in a car, and it's pulled by a little locomotive, and it goes all around, I guess, through this 1.5 acre train park. And they have all the trees lighted up. It was Christmas time. And then once we got off the train ride, which was exciting, all these other people on the train with us, all very excited. We went into one of the biggest model railroad exhibits in the West, where all these different gauge trains that people, myself, I grew up with Lionel trains, which is an O scale track. And then there's the smaller gauge tracks, the HO. And that was exciting, very elaborate layouts of little towns and mountains and rivers. And so we must have spent an hour looking at that before getting back to the hotel. And then the next day was a breakfast to get ready for the road and then riding home. And there wasn't that much traffic, fortunately, but the ride was beautiful. And it goes into a lot of the things I've been thinking about, which is the things I like to think about. And of course, from my memoir, that I talk about frequently. It really is about law, the impact of law on individuals in this society and all over the world. And I'm realizing now, the more I think about it, there's only one big set of natural laws. And then there are two subsidiary sets of laws.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the subsidiary sets is the law of religion, all the laws that govern religious beliefs, all those systems. Well, food interacts with religion.
Yeah.
And food with religion is a civilization. And without food, we would not have developed the first laws of social existence, economic existence, because that was handled by how people ate food all over the world. And the kind of food they ate determined their customs.
Yeah.
So all of economics came out of
Wow.
gathering food and eating food and protecting food and keeping jealous neighbors from stealing your food.
Uh-huh.
And so that introduced the laws of battle
Yeah.
and warfare.
Of course,
So,
right? Oh.
well, religion came out of eating and eating food. And there's many different belief systems. One belief has to do with you can't eat certain meat. So the ancient Middle Eastern peoples had strict laws against eating pork, whether they were Muslims or Jews. And so that shaped a lot of the traditions of how people live their lives. Well, they used to think that pork contained microorganisms that could make you sick, like cysts that they would cause in the body.
Yeah.
But there's more. The anthropologists have studied the matter and discovered it was really economics that caused people not to eat certain foods because of the microbes. So that's very interesting also. That anyway, all those topics came up at the feast. But I like to focus on the laws of nature.
Yeah.
Now that's the big set of laws, and those are the universal natural laws. And And then, as I said, the laws of religion emerged to help people live together. Didn't mean they had perfect laws, but they learned to live together. And then the laws of government came out of the laws of religion. The laws of government, that you had your executive branches, who ran the tribe,
Mm-hmm.
who made decisions for the tribe. And I mean, tribes back 10,000 years ago. And then you had, well, the civilization brings us to where we are now. And I love to talk about the industrial era. And so we're in the latest uh, uh, part of the industrial era. And of course, we, as people in this country, remember when trains came about. We had steam power.
Yeah.
We had steam power to power factories, to power vehicles, transportation, and the slowest transportation was trains. And so these days the trains are pretty fast. The European trains are faster. The Japanese trains are even faster. So America's a little behind on speed of trains, but and there's reasons for that are economical and political. So trains lost out in the political economic
Ah.
struggles, but
Yeah.
they're being redecided as we speak. And air transportation is the king of all the transportations except for the automobile. Well, my sister loves her little flex vehicle. It's a little compact, has a back seat and a front seat and a little boot in the back, which is the trunk, which you can open from the back of the car.
Yeah.
And she loves to drive it skillfully. She drives it like it's a sport car.
Yeah.
So that made things very interesting, driving home on the desert highways and retracing my own drive from Georgia last April and not really knowing where I was as I got closer to the high desert as it started to get dark. So I didn't really see where I was in the desert after leaving what Arizonans all know as Quartzsite. It's this town that's some miles from not that far from the Colorado River and the border to California. And then you're on I-10 at that point, a lovely interstate highway. But we took the shortcut, which is Highway 177,
Oh, okay.
California 177. You turn, I guess you turn north on 177, and you go for about, maybe 30 miles. And then you get to California 62, which is the road we wanted because we live right off of
Yeah.
I-62 in the 29 Palms area.
Okay.
Well, what I missed coming out,
Huh.
because I wasn't familiar with the territory, was that desert that as you get higher, as you leave I-10, which is still, I don't know, 100 miles from Palm Springs, and then start gaining altitude. So we're rising up about 2,000 feet, going up 177 and then 62. And the desert is breathtaking in its beauty because you get a chance to see these long, distant scenes of mountains with very beautiful shapes and the mountain tops right where I live in Joshua Tree. They only rise 2,000 or 3,000 feet above where we live in 29 Palms. But what we don't see is that 29 Palms is 2,200 feet elevation itself. So the Joshua Tree Mountains are really, their peaks go up to 4,000 to over 5,000 feet. And they're very rocky, very beautiful, and I haven't really searched that out yet. But that brings me back to the laws
Yeah.
and how government makes laws. And laws come from experiences with our environment, whether they're human environment, like other tribes that you live up on the other side of the mountains from, or whether they're uh, climate environments. But these things begin to shape what kind of structures that we have to live in our different places in the world where people live. And that's where things get more interesting. I started reading my book by uh, Sapolsky, Sapolsky, who's really, what is he? He's much of an anthropologist, an
Okay.
economist, and a man who knows many things. And he wrote this book, which I thought about all the time I was away, because I realized I'm living out things he's talking about. So he talks about free will. He talks about what's called determinism. So the title of the book is Determined. What determines how we adopt our behaviors in life? How do different peoples in different places get the behaviors that they get? Then the question is there really free will?
Yeah.
Or is there really no free will? And I realized I didn't understand the question until I got deeper in the book and got into what he's really starting to talk about. And he says he spends the first half really trying to show
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes it looks like we have free will, and the second half talking about how we really don't have any free will.
Yeah.
And so the third day of reading, I'm saying, well, I don't know what I think about that. I think I have free will. Well, that gets to my memoir, because
Yes.
I talk about free will. Back in the 1800s, did my great grandmother have free will to live her life as she wished, even though she was owned by somebody else who
Yeah.
lives in Virginia? And then they all moved to uh,
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky. And that's where my maternal grandparents' story begins, is in Kentucky. And my prologue is about great granny Lucy, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And I hit on that subtitle in that prologue
Mm-hmm.
chapter because of the Beatles song title,
Yeah.
Lucy in the Sky
Sky with
with Diamonds.
diamonds. Yeah.
And that, even though the Beatles said no, they didn't base that on a psychedelic theme, and which I think they were probably covering their tracks a little there, but that's all right. Uh, Lucy's Diamonds, I just discovered in my writing from Lucy's letter that I based my whole prologue on. Her letter, written in
Ah.
1856
Wow.
to her daughter, might have been her eldest daughter, named Ari, or Era for short, A-R-A or A-R-I-E. So Era caused this letter to be written, and in which I spoke about recently, and that she wants Ari to give up her sinful ways so that she
Mm-hmm.
can meet up with Ari when they get to heaven. Now, we're talking about religion as it was widely believed and practiced by people of that day in the middle of the 19th century and before. and their beliefs in a divine creator and what that meant. And it meant they had a strong moral connection between their religious beliefs and what they felt was right and wrong. So she told Harry, now, I think that you should get right with the Lord before you die. So I'll be able to see you when we get to heaven.
Yeah.
That was no small matter.
Aww.
Because they lived in a complex social structure called American slavery.
Yeah.
That was peopled by African peoples who were brought from Africa, and they had owners. That made for a very complex society, which really concerned Lucy a lot because it affected how everybody socialized. And I'm thinking at the Thanksgiving dinner, how far we have come from that moment when Lucy was writing these letters to her daughter.
Yeah.
And so she used the word sin. And the only thing I could conclude was that the sin was not entirely Harry's behavior, but the behavior of the people who held them in servitude. And so she was guarding her language and what she said, because she knew that her letter would be read by her daughter's owners, the head of the little plantation that they lived on. That led to careful use of language. And she concluded the letter, now, give my love to Mr. and Mrs. Wood. They were the ones that owned the little plantation that had employed these people in bondage. Well, there were liberties taken in those days by the owning men of the plantation, whether it was Kentucky and the border states or Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Texas, and the Deep South, Mississippi, where they took liberties, and that's where free will comes in. Because the liberties that were taken on the people that they were directed toward were not always for fornication that led to children that were the children, became the children of Harry and her families all over the South, where these children came about. Well, what we had were, again, the race issue comes in when I was talking about what is race. Nobody really knows what it is, because when they refer to it, and we talked about the gentleman who wrote the article where he used the word mongrel to describe his race. And he was considered to be white by the society and the government, but he did not choose to put white because he only had some European ancestry. Well, most of his ancestry was European, but some of it was Middle Eastern. And he knew that every time he was out in the sun, because he'd get a good, deep suntan.
Wow.
But other than that, the laws of the society said he was white. And basically, the state of Virginia was the one that made clear what that meant. It meant that you were anybody that was not from a dark complexion genetic group was officially white. And you could be up to 164th European in your heritage and be considered white. So you had to be 164th or less Black, African, and the rest had to be white. Now that's where it gets really important for our society now, because the government has taken on a campaign
Totally.
to eliminate what they call DEI
Yep.
processes, which were designed really for the descendants of the slaves to find their way to become first-class citizens in our society. And that was true
Yeah.
of, I'd say half, more than half of my ancestors. Now, so rich and interesting is how the two halves found one another, how each half treated the other half of this racial ethnic mystery. It
Yeah.
turns out, at least, that in Lucy's family, in Aries' family that owned the plantation, they had a relatively, fortunately, a mild form of servitude, which meant that they were treated with more than a modicum of respect, except for when it came along to fornicating kinds of behaviors.
Yeah.
We don't know what happened. There's no records of how that was conducted
Yeah.
and how people, but I do know Toni Morrison, the novelist, wrote about that
Wow.
aspect of life in America in her book Beloved. And the people that were featured in it, the Garners, they may have had a different name in the book, but the Garners lived in the same territory as my great grandparents and great great grandparents. Now, there were different degrees of how the different little plantations treated the subjugated group. And I am grateful to say that the records left by the elders showed that, as I said, there was a modicum of goodness and respect shown to these ancestors in servitude. So they had some freedom to come and go.
Yeah.
And even if there was no specific freedom, they took the freedom anyway. So that's where I brought in free will. Well, Lucy was an elderly woman back in the 1850s when she wrote these letters to her daughter, who was probably in her 30s to 40s.
Wow.
And the daughter, we can understand from the testimony of the elders in the family that people still found ways to relate to one another in intimate terms, as long as relating was being done and governed by the head beings, which were the men of the plantation classes.
Yep.
The women of color on the plantations were able to use their free will, at least, okay, if I'm going to have a child by this person or some person, at least I can determine who it might be. And that was important because many women could say, well, if I have children by this person up the road, the child would turn out to have lighter skin complexion. And then, but Ari was very democratic in her free will in choosing whom she permitted to father children by her. Now, that's probably the most sensitive factoid I get to in my prologue.
Yeah.
But it is important
Too.
because it demonstrates how people handled this idea of free will. And so we have to purge ourselves that there was some standard way of handling that. Lucy, who was the mother of Ari had Ari, let's see, I'm trying to, she had children by the plantation
Okay.
owner. And the main person that I'm thinking of who was born to one of these uh, liaisons,
Yeah.
there were about 8 children that,
Mm-hmm.
that Ari bore. And one of them was my great grandfather, who looked very much like his plantation father. He was brought in to be raised in what we call the master's house with the
Okay.
master's wife and children. So he was raised in what they call the big house,
Okay.
which gave him certain
Aw.
advantages. Now, the main advantages there, he had a big sister who was the daughter of the master and his wife. And that big sister taught my
Yeah.
great grandfather how to read, how
Wow.
to write, how to do
Amazing.
arithmetic.
Amazing. I
I
can't.
mention that because of its critical
Yeah,
social value,
of course.
and that because he mastered those arts,
Ugh.
when he was free of servitude and then migrated some years later to Topeka, Kansas, he established a farm. But he established a farm with the inheritance from his father. Now,
Wow.
I'm introducing here a, a domino effect because people who were in my great grandfather's situation helped to spread the knowledge and the wealth, not just to their family, but to all others of African American heritage who were in their area of influence. So, great grandpa was a prosperous man in Topeka, Kansas, who lived until
Aw.
1817. He
Yeah.
had he had a wife who was from similar circumstances, who was my great grandmother. Her name was Anna.
Mm-hmm.
So Anna and Anthony, my great grandparents, had several children. There were 6 of them. There were 5 boys and 1 girl. I got to know 3, at least, 3 of those family branches. But they all had very interesting life experiences because they were such a blend of human appearances. One of them looked what today we would designate, oh, he's African American, based on skin color and hair texture and all that. But the others looked closer to
Aw.
European heritage, and they had very interesting adventures in life. So they all wound up in Chicago except my grandfather, who migrated on to California in 1919. Now, I don't know if you wanted to turn on the phones because these are hot topics.
The lines are open. 631-307-4010. They're open. 631-307-4010. At any time, give us a call. Go for it.
Now, free will is connected to an idea of fantasy. And in a way, all human beings construct and live in the fantasies of their choice.
Yep.
What does that really mean? I would say that I'm trying to think. Oh, it's in volume 1. I'm trying to see how I stated that. People decide they want to live certain ways. They want to live in certain areas. They want to have houses that are built a certain way.
Yeah.
And that carries across the whole world of
Wow.
how you want to live. So free will and fantasy are kind of related. They're not exactly the same thing. But this book by Sapolsky begins to bring it home that how I came out at my time of life now was, in a sense, looked like it was determined by
Yep.
how I lived as a little child. In
Oh.
other words, I picked up habits, I picked up language, I picked up traits of how my parents spoke, how they lived.
Yeah.
And when
Of
you
course.
multiply that by a billion,
Yep.
8 billion people in the world today, they have 8 billion different belief systems and
Wow.
behavior. So, what the heck is the best civilization to design for that?
True.
And so that's what we celebrate or try to remember, that we live in a democracy
Mm-hmm.
where demo, people,
Oh, got it.
crassy.
Democracy. I never thought of it that way. Yeah,
Crassy is the part of how we govern our
yeah. Mm-hmm.
it's governed by the people, the views of the people. And and we've been the first that we know of really great example of that for so many people. Because we're seeing already in California, such a huge state, it's bigger than most of the nations in Europe in terms of population. So I like to say, well, I think they say the population is 39 million, but
Who
I'd
knows,
like to
right?
say it's
Yeah.
probably at least 42 million, because you never know who's here. And we realize those that are the designers of the urban areas are well aware that California is long past its right carrying capacity. That's a terminology that comes out of systems engineering and systems
Yeah.
science. A system, take like a bus. It's
Oh,
designed to carry 38 passengers. And if you
that's a lot
get
of people, but yeah.
sometimes more passengers than is built for, it can't manage it. You've got a little couple of bathroom stalls on the bus, but uh, you can only hold so many. Same applies to a town, to a city. And LA, that is such a huge city from when I grew up there.
Yeah.
Amazing. Because the freeways are always have heavy traffic, even at 2 in the morning crossing Los Angeles. Now, had LA
Hmm.
not built the number of freeways
Yeah.
that it did in the 1950s and 60s, it just would be impossible right now to get around. But California, Southern California, Northern California, Bay Area, they had excellent light rail systems. But Los Angeles, in its unfortunate wisdom, under the guidance of people who would profit off of a bus system, caused the demise of the light rail trolley cars all over Southern California. I mean, you could get on almost anywhere and go to a streetcar that plugs you into a light rail car that goes all the way to Santa Monica Beach or all the way to Long Beach or all the way out almost to San Bernardino to the east. But the petroleum companies said,
Yeah.
well, we could sell more petroleum and be more profitable if we went to an automobile based economy. And that's what was done. And the people were excited and thrilled. Have your own automobile. You can drive anywhere you want. You go to Knott's Berry Farm. You go to Disneyland and get around. That's called free will, to have a car, to drive yourself around. But you don't have that free will anymore in Southern California, LA area. All the way from Santa Barbara down to San Diego is almost one big city. We know that more from disasters that California has suffered. Well, everyone has disasters, but there's so many people here, they're more disastrous. And
Yeah.
we see floods that follow fires,
Mm-hmm.
wildfires out in the rural areas, but now they're coming into the cities. So that's what I have moved back to. But hopefully to share my insights with regional planners and city planners how to address that problem rather than finger pointing and saying, well, the mayor's, it's her
Yep.
fault, or it's the governor's fault, or it's that congressperson's fault. And that's something maybe we need a little more religion to get beyond that of just blaming the psychology of blame. Um, well, this is wandered around quite a bit today, but I think it's been an interesting journey of wandering because it's helping me decide where I'm headed to next. Now,
Yeah.
the thing I really need to talk about is that I violated one of the laws of my mind in psychology. 2 weeks ago, I had driven from, forget where I was driving. I might have just been going shopping or something like that. I got back to the carport, just maybe, I don't know, 80 feet or so from my apartment front door. And got back the next day. I had my car keys and I couldn't find the ignition key. I said, what did I do with the ignition key? It's on the same cluster, the key ring that I've been carrying for years. Well, I never did find that key.
Yeah.
Very frustrating. I was one whole week without a key. How do you get a new key, way out here in
Yeah.
the upper desert? You have to call AAA to come
Yep.
and tow you to a locksmith. And the closest locksmith where I could do that was in Yucca Valley, 22 miles away. Or if they didn't have one, it would be 70 miles away near Palm Springs. And it took days to really mastermind the strategy of how to really get that key made. Well, it turned out I didn't really need a AAA tow.
Had to
I
do
worked with the locksmith,
it. There you go.
and I did it because the locksmith had a van, a very modern van, where they have key making equipment on board and all of the pattern keys that I needed. And I could not get my car out of this parking space until that van came up. It's been, I don't know, maybe a week ago now. And that gentleman who drove the van took a key template, stuck it in the driver's side where you stick the key in the lock of the door. And he had a little electronic device where he could sense the outline of where the key fit in the door.
Mm-hmm.
And then that went into his computer. Then he went back in and it only took him 5 minutes and he cut a new key. But that key was only for the door because the ignition needed an electronic chip in it because it has to communicate with that chip when it goes into the door.
Yeah.
And it only took him 5 minutes to do it. Well, the good news is I didn't have to, well, I could have gotten a tow for AAA, but it didn't cost as much as it might have, like $400 or $500.
Yeah.
It was a little under 400. So I was
I
so
know.
joyful. I said, well, I'll never do that again. Now that brought me back to things I've learned in my free willing life.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those was I wanted to understand human behavior, starting
Mm-hmm.
with my own, and
Aw.
how that impacted the behavior of others. And so I set out to learn all of the psychology I could, not by taking courses. And this is a good point to make. I learned it, the psychology I needed to learn. First of all, Gestalt psychology, which was developed in Europe by Frederick Perls back in the 1930s and 1940s. And then they immigrated over here. And then there was, the psychology of Sigmund Freud, who was European, but he had a student named Carl Jung. And I ultimately learned
Oh.
the basics of those psychologies, Jungian psychology,
Yeah.
also Abraham Maslow
Oh,
psychology. And so
why
what
does
did
that
that
sound so
mean?
familiar? Wait, what? Abraham who?
Maslow,
That sounds so familiar.
MASLW.
Okay.
Maslow's he set forth 3 points that an infant needs to survive into
Okay.
healthy childhood. There's 3 points. One is the child has to be born into a situation of love and affection and the
Okay.
protection of a loving household. The second one, the child has to have his or her physical needs, yet needs to eat and
Okay.
have a lodging and protection from the weather.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is, much the same as the first one, but a very wholesome uh, environment where you feel belonging. So I
Yeah.
learned a lot of my psychology by reading and by talking to my friends who were psychologists. And the fascinating branch I liked was Carl Jung's psychology.
Got it. I've heard. Yeah.
Agatha Christie, the author of mysteries, was a master, or I
Yeah.
should say, a mistress of Jungian psychology. Now,
Mm.
she didn't point it out, but she lived in Jung's days.
Okay.
And this key incident
Wow.
made sense to me because of my Jungian psychology background that Miss Marple, one of Agatha Christie's characters, was solving a mystery called The Body in the Library. A lot of people have seen that on a DVD, a CD, and that's what came up for me because one of the main characters in that episode was one of the executives of the uh, the British police agency, and his name was Sir Henry Clavering. And Sir Henry got from Miss Marple, there was some fingernail clippings that were found in the room of the victim who had been
Oh.
murdered. One
Oh
of
my
this young
gosh.
woman in there. And so, Miss Marple was she told Sir Henry the whole key is in these fingernail clippings. We get to that. We solve the mystery. And he couldn't see it. Nobody could see it but Miss Marple. And that's what came back to me while I was stewing over how did I let myself lose this key? I still
Mm-hmm.
haven't found it, but I had to admit, that wasn't the purpose of that experience. It was
No.
to ask myself what Miss Marple did. And she said the whole key is in the fingernail clippings. And for me, that loss of the key was
Yeah.
the key to understanding some other things in my life that I had not understood yet. And I said, the whole thing was about the lost key. And so that's how that ended up.
Oh,
And I don't need
it's funny.
anything more detailed.
I ran into someone
Yeah.
this weekend at Costco who they lost their car key. Ironically, in Costco, there's someone that sits in a van outside sometimes, and they offered like regular, long story short, the guy got his key made for like $150 right in the parking lot. I don't know the name of the company, but it's a mobile thing. You have him in New York, I guess. He happened to be there, and a guy when we were doing I was like, oh my gosh, what are the chances? So he lucked out on that one.
Well, the funny thing, I had been to Costco down in La Quinta, which is a
Mm-hmm.
suburb of Palm Springs, and I said, "Well, there was someone there, and they were offering keys." And I said, "Well, what is this?" And well, this is if you need a key, you need a new key for your ignition. And I realized I thought about that when I lost the key to my car just 2 weeks ago, and I had just faced that kind of problem with someone who was in business making keys at Costco.
Yep. Oh, what are the chances?
Yeah,
Well, unfortunately, we haven't had any callers. We only have a minute left in the show. But I want to thank you for being here. We got to kind of wrap it up. Go ahead, Grant.
right, right. Well, it was fun. It's been fun.
How can we reach out to you and contact you for more on your memoirs and on you?
At website Grant Venerable PhD all lowercase .com and the VENTWO at AOL.com.
Perfect.
It's my email address, and put it Ray.
Yep.
Put referencing the memoir, footsteps in the footprints in the chaotic known by Grant Venerable. You can
Will
find
do.
that online. Find it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Apple websites.
Thank you so much, Grant. Enjoy the rest of
And
your
it will-
day. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill.
Bye, darling.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes two. There's pool. And there's the photo booth.
All right, everybody squeeze in. Say cheese.
Followed naturally by an order of wings. And another.
Can we get some extra ranch sauce?
Then there's the ceremonial nightcap.
So what are we doing this weekend?
And lastly, it's back to the car, which, if you're buzzed, could be the most expensive night of your life. Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.